Hey teachers, we're back again with week 4 of environmental justice. So please hang along with me as we go for a ride through week 4's lessons. Um, Here we go. Today, all right, this week we'll be looking at again how can you be a champion of change, being our overlying theme for the week. We want you to start off with a review, a recap of last week's challenge. Remember, they had to go to grocery stores, online stores, and compare and contrast the differences between plastic costs and more reusable, like glass Tupperware versus plastic Tupperware. All right, um, items, and what they found is it more economically viable to purchase cheaper plastic items versus higher quality stainless steel or glass items. Uh, so, have the students share their findings? Okay, are they noticing that there's a privilege with going green? Okay, so spend some time talking about that. Maybe have some kids share their screens if they can on the tables that they posted in Google Classroom. So this week we're looking at global solutions. We spent 3 weeks looking at the problems. What is the problems in the world? All right, and now we want to talk about how do we fix those problems. So no longer just stating, all right, that the world's going down, 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 down. We've made a mess of things. Let's talk about how we're gonna make things better. Okay, so the goal today is to identify ways to be economically and environmentally sustainable. Keyword for this week is sustainable. Now, here's a quick graphic that we found is pretty interesting. You'll notice that through our discussions from previous weeks that the amount of plastic being used in the world is going up dramatically, right? We see plastic everywhere, more and more and more. However, when you look at the amount of recycling that's occurring, paper over the last few decades has dramatically increased the proportion of paper that we recycle. All right, but plastic is not really growing that much at all. Why are we not recycling much plastic? All right, we're recycling a lot more paper, metal, and glass, but plastic itself is not being heavily recycled here in the US. Why is that? Okay, so before we watch our first video, okay, we have a pre-question. All right, this question is going to get answered in the video, but we know that nature, okay, does not waste much. Nature itself is very efficient in recycling. What do we mean by that? Well, we know that the water cycle, right? The same water has been around since the dinosaurs, is still around today, right? It gets purified, goes up in clouds, evaporates, comes back down as precipitation, we get rain, right? Same water going around and around and around, no waste. Decomposition, right? Circle of life. All right, things live, they die, they decompose, go back in the ground, and then things grow out of it again, right? Very efficient. The oxygen to carbon dioxide cycle with the trees is also very efficient. There's a lot of these systems that exist here in our Earth that are very, very efficient, getting reused and reused and reused. Okay, uh, why can we as humans not do that with the products that we make? Okay, what does it mean to be environmentally and economically stable? Okay, these answers again are down here in the teacher's notes. All right, what does it mean to have little waste? Sorry, it means to have little waste. Nothing gets thrown out for good. It is fully recyclable and reusable. So when we're talking about environmental and economically sustainable, all right, the things that we make, the things that we use, don't ever end up in a landfill permanently. Okay. The first video we're going to watch is really interesting. It's about a man who created the first large-scale plastic recycling plant that can take any plastic and turn it back into reusable plastic. See, a lot of plastic plants, they can only handle, again, there's 7 types of plastics, right? Can only handle 1, 2, or maybe 3 of those options. This man had created a factory that can do all options of plastic and can do it in bulk at large scale. So if he could mass produce these plants around the world, we have a game changer when it comes to recycling plastics, because he returns the plastic right back to its original form that the factories first make it to get turned into products. So it's really interesting. So after you do that, he goes into answering what it means to be environmentally, economically sustainable. Have this time now to recap. Hey kids, what does it mean? Okay, and again, the answers are down below. I was going the wrong way. Oh, I'm going the wrong way again. Back up. So after discussion with the kids, we got another video. This video is creating jobs around the world. So this man goes to third world countries and he hires the locals in those areas to go to the beaches, to go to the local communities, go to their towns and pick up plastic trash. Those people then sort the trash and bring it to him, and he pays them for it. He then collects that and takes it to a recycling plant, and he gets paid. Right? That's how he makes his money. But he then in return hires local people in developing nations to not only clean up their area, but also recycle all the trash that there is. So it's pretty interesting. It's just another way that one person can make a difference around the world. This lady here, she's a PhD scientist, really intelligent lady. She came up with a bacteria that eats plastic. Now this is really cool because we know that plastic takes centuries to decompose on its own. Well, what if we could just create a bacteria that's natural, well, that just happens naturally in nature now, that you could put into a landfill that will go through that landfill and eat the bacteria? What if we could release this bacteria into the great garbage patch in the ocean, and that bacteria would just eat up and decompose that plastic? That'd be really interesting, and that's kind of her plan, is if we could have some way that we could have Mother Nature take care of our plastic problem on its own and shorten that centuries of time to decompose plastic to just down to decades or even shorter. Now, the problem with that is, well, is this becoming possibly an invasive species? It's a word we want you guys to talk about with the kids, because here's my thoughts. If we have a factory, okay, and we take our plastic to this factory and the factory recycles it and reuses the plastic, right? What if the factory ever got out of control? We lost control of it. Well, what could we do? We'll shut the power off to it, right? And it shuts down. We control everything about the factory. Imagine for a minute, we create this bacteria that we release into the world that eats plastic. What if that bacteria didn't stay in its containment, like Jurassic Park style? It's meant to go into a landfill, but what if it spreads from the landfill to the local towns or the local cities? Like my house has tons of plastic in it. My car has tons of plastic in it. The last thing I want is something like a fungus or a bacteria that's now attached to my car or my items in my house that's now eating away slowly by slowly the items that I own. That would be a big problem. How do you stop that problem? Can you stop that problem? So if we create this bacteria and then release it into the environment, will it become an invasive species that takes over, all right, an ecosystem that we don't want it to, aka my home, your home, our livelihoods? So we have a video here about invasive species that have been released into the environment, like frogs in Australia, snakes in Florida, and just simply describing to kids what an invasive species is. And then we want you to have a discussion with the kids after watching the movie. Do you think that releasing this bacteria into the world is actually a good thing to do? Is this a good idea or is this a bad idea? Because there's definitely some ethical issues here to talk about, okay? And then we're going to start wrapping it up with this young man. He was a student in middle school and high school when he became compelled to make a change with this plastic problem in the ocean. So at a young age, even while he was in high school, he started designing a system that would go out to the great garbage patch and clean it up. And that's actually his mission, is to clean up the great garbage patch. So we have a before at the beginning of his story, all right, about a decade ago, till now, where he has actually already started cleaning up the great garbage patch in the Pacific Ocean and the process to get there. I do have down here in the comments and the notes section a full version, all right, which would be great for an engineering class. He does a presentation talking about the entire process to go from start to end of his engineering design process to overcome many challenges to create his prototype for cleaning up the oceans. How he got sponsorships, how his team of engineers that he has now hired hit some serious hurdles and some snags, whereas their prototypes even broke when they released them into the ocean. How they overcame all that. Really cool story. It's just too long for our time here, but maybe for an engineering class, that might be a great idea to talk about it, all right? Or even just release it to the kids, let them watch on their own, okay? Then do a recap with the kids before we finish up. What are some solutions? What are some ways that we on a big global scale can start tackling this plastic problem in our oceans, okay? Remember that we have the plastic factory where Mike Biddle designed a new factory to handle all types of plastics. We have a plastic eating bacteria. We have a way that people can hire others in developing nations to collect their plastic and resell it. And then Boyan Slats, that's the young man who has that ocean cleanup project. Okay. That is it for the week for you to teach as a lesson. The challenge for this week is we have a web quest. It's actually a really good article that we want the kids to read. And we have a series of questions to see if they actually read through the article as responses. Now, Shauna has recorded herself reading the article. So for students who struggle with reading, as this might be a little higher level, all right, we're going to post in Google Classroom her screencastify of her reading through the article so the kids can actually watch Miss Johnson read through it if they just want to listen in, or they can try and read it themselves. That'd be really good. And then they can just post their 4-question response or so it is into their Google Classroom. That's it for this week. We only have 2 more weeks left after this of environmental cleanup when it comes to the ocean, and then we're going to transition into climate change and more things on land. All right, teachers, have a great week.